Flyweight prospect square off coming up this weekend. We have Greater Manchester Zone. It's the Wigan Man, the Punisher, Muhammad Mokaev. He's undefeated as a pro, undefeated as an amateur, multiple-time IMMAF champ. Will the IMMAF, will they cease to exist coming up soon? We don't know, but Muhammad Mokaev is on a roll. He's like Hansel.
Hansel. So hot right now. Hansel.
Muhammad Mokaev coming up this weekend. He's taking on a legitimate pastor in Jafel Filho, Nova União's own. And Matt, how does it have to be when you go to church and your pastor's finished 13 of 14 wins?
I'm glad you said wins, but he is a good fighter, and that's the thing about Filho. Like, you do look at his background, and that kind of overshadows or overshines what he does good at, but like, Filo's a really talented young prospect, and you bring it up, I feel like a lot of shine is going to go to Mokaev this week, and rightfully so. He has had so much hype coming into the UFC, and he has delivered on a lot of it up until this point, but I don't want that to overshadow the fact that Filho is a very promising young prospect.
And we were really excited about Filho's fight on Dana White's Contender Series this past summer. On week 9, he fought Herbert Echeverria. Let's throw it on over to a clip from that show.
I know Filho comes out of Nova União, but he's very much my hands are low. I'm going to strike. I'm going to try and take the fight down to the mat. His jiu-jitsu is electric. 12 of his 13 wins, Filho's, are by finish, 9 of them by submission. I have good grappling as kind of his big basis. His takedowns are really weird. Like he likes the body lock to trip takedown, like trying to push guys down. And for Filho, both of these fighters, Echeverria and Filho, have experience at bantamweight. Filho's definitely the bigger fighter. When you look at them at weigh-ins, Filho's taller. He looked completely drawn out, which I didn't love. And the other thing, when I look at Filho, made his pro debut in 2012, fights, 1 fight in 2017, 2 in 2018, 1 in 2019, 1 in 2021, and the last fight that he had at flyweight was back in 2017, where he lost the, his belt by submission down in Brazil. So I look at this as, former Shuto flyweight champ is Filho, but I haven't seen it all that recently. And Echeverria, man, I have so many different things to say about him, but both of these guys are electric.
Filho does have great takedowns and jiu-jitsu, and his grappling is phenomenal. His striking just reminds me of like an early career Damian Maia, though. And remember what happened to Damian Maia when he fought Nate Marquardt? He rushed in, he got hit by one shot, got flatlined. Like, I think Filho does have those types of skills, but the problem is I do think he has the type of striking that can get him caught on the feet too. If he does end up fighting one of those top-tier strikers, I think Filho has a really interesting game that I'm curious to see how it develops as he moves forward.
So on week 9, Nurullo Aliyev was able to get a contract, Austin Lane was able to get a contract, Raul Rosas Jr., and of course in the main event, Bruno Ferreira was able to knock out Gregory Rodriguez in the UFC. Jafel Filho looking to kind of step in and make an impact like that. And who's to say he can't? I mean, on the regional scene, he was a Jungle Fights champ. He took a long time off, and then he ended up on Dana White's Contender Series. So some of the layoffs in Filho's career have been a little weird, but you know him as a guy out of a big-time gym in Nova União.
Sure.
But he's not necessarily married to the striking or married to the grappling. It's just a fight like this is really tricky because for Mokaev, he could struggle in bits. I mean, we saw him his last time out against Malcolm Gordon sink in a submission win, but the lasting image at the end of round 2, he's stuck in a rear naked choke. Round 3, he gets caught in a really tricky situation, but then he ends up getting himself good. If you look at it for Mokaev, I pointed to certain fights that he's had, whether they were IMMAF fights, I guess he's had a couple of different ones where they kind of went a little sideways and then he was able to reel it back in, or the fight that he had against Abdel Hussein as a pro. But for Mokaev, some fights, like the Charles Johnson fight, he's struggling to get the finish, but the pieces are there.
Is it fair to say, though, at 22 years of age, I'd rather you just have difficult moments in some of your fights than you be losing a lot of fights?
The biggest thing that concerns me, it has nothing to do with the grappling or the takedowns. Even though Filho is a black belt and he's a very adept grappler, you can see that from just the picture where he's giving out the hang loose. Has he spent time with BJ Penn at Nova União?
I'd say.
Maybe. But when you look at it for Filho, heavy-handed, he can be reserved, but the power is there, and you saw that his last time out against Herbert Echeverria. He was able to go out there in the last round. He lands the counter left hook as he's kind of moving forward, drops him, and then I thought it was a little bit of an early stoppage, but he goes out there and gets the finish. Dana White said, slow start to that fight. Love the way his opponent fought, which is always weird when you're kind of up playing Herbert Echeverria. But Filho's got heavy hands, and sometimes Mokaev doesn't necessarily respect the punching power of his opponents, though for Mokaev getting ready for this one, he is, like many other fighters, training out of Tiger Muay Thai.
I also had a lot of criticisms coming out of a lot of Mokaev fights. There's just little moments that you can nitpick, but again, I kind of let my hand go by interrupting you. It is the truth. I'd rather you just have difficult, minute moments in your fights when you're 22 years old than you be losing a bunch of fights on the regional scene before you come into the UFC. And that's the thing about Mokaev. He's fighting guys who have a ton of experience when he doesn't really have a lot of it himself. And that'll be the interesting thing in this matchup, too, because Filho has fought a high-level competition, I would say, on the regional scene. Has a lot of fights before coming into the UFC. Not that 16 is an incredible amount, but again, it's not like he's an 8-0, 8-1 type of fighter. I just think for Mokaev, and you had said this, Filho is very well-rounded, but he does have heavy hands, and I think the heavy hand factor will give him the puncher's chance, but I've said this many times before, and I'm going to say it many times again. When we start doing these predictions, and I keep on falling back to, well, he has a puncher's chance to win this fight, I just don't think he has a great matchup. Now, hopefully he can threaten with some of the jiu-jitsu off of his back. Hopefully he can make it difficult for Mokaev to complete a lot of those takedowns, but from what I've seen out of Mokaev, not only does he have the takedown ability, he has pretty good 15-minute cardio to go along with it, too. I don't think if he doesn't complete a couple takedowns in the first round, he's going to become a completely different fighter overnight, and that's why, not that I think Mokaev can become a future champion by any means, but that's why I do think he can at least get into the top 15, because that cardio alone is going to carry him through a lot of these matchups, I believe.
That win that Mokaev has on his record against Hayden Schriff, that one's flagged by Topology.
And you hate that.
You hate to see that. Old Schriff, 0-9 as a pro, and as an amateur, he went, 11 or 12 or 13, so tricky one there for Hayden Schriff.
When you turn pro at that
Hayden
point?
Schriff. For Muhammad Mokaev, because you get paid, he is a giant favorite in the matchup, as he has been in his UFC contest performance bonus against Cody Durden. Did Muhammad Mokaev have? We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. I don't suspect they're going to be close.
I don't either.
But hopefully I've given the flowers to Filho. I'm going to say over under 90% Mokaev.
I think they'll be over.
If they're going to be over, 96%
job
Mokaev on almost 1,000 total votes, 39% by decision, 51% by submission. For the 4% that have Filho, 44% by knockout. And to me, I might put too much stock into it from Mokaev because, again, you see the fight against Blaine O'Driscoll. He goes out there, submits him over with Brave. That was a giant win. Cody Durden, it's a quick submission win. Charles Johnson rides it out with the wrestling against a very good fighter in Charles Johnson, who he must have seen when he was with Tiger Muay Thai, because Johnson's been there recently training.
Spider-Man me.
And then his last time out, I thought the striking defense regressed to a point that we saw when he was with IMMAF as a very young man, so I'm eager to see what changes he's able to implement. And maybe there was an aspect of cockiness in there against a guy like Gordon, where he able to just kind of dart out of the way, because he dropped his hands and put his head out, and that's how you get put on a poster. Luke Rockhold's seen it, and hopefully he doesn't have to see it in BKFC. I have Muhammad Mokaev in the matchup, but Jafel Filho is a big underdog and has a chance, so to say.
He has a chance, but I do have Mokaev in this matchup.
All right, Matt. So both of us going with Punisher, Muhammad Mokaev, Thomas Jane to get the win. Some big-time fights on this card, and a lot of fighters out of the UK. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.